The first gunshot echoed through the commons at Marshall County High School. Students froze. Some thought it was a prank, others ran. Within seconds, more shots followed. By the time it stopped, two 15-year-olds, Bailey Nicole Holt and Preston Ryan Cope, would never make it home. It was January 23, 2018, around 7:57 a.m. CST. Students had been gathering before class when 15-year-old Gabriel Ross Parker walked in with a Ruger MK2 .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol taken from his stepfather's home. Witnesses said his eyes looked empty. He spoke to no one. He had already checked the band room to make sure his friends weren't there. Then he stepped into the commons and began firing. Bailey lost her life at the scene. Reports say she tried to call her mother but couldn't speak. Preston was badly hurt and later passed at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. 14 others were injured, some hit by bullets, others hurt while fleeing. Students jumped fences, ran into nearby woods, or fell in the rush to escape. After firing, Parker dropped the pistol and ran to the weight room, hiding among other students. At first, no one knew he was the shooter. Some motioned for him to join them. Then a student recognized him and told a teacher, who contacted law enforcement. At 8:06 a.m., the Marshall County Sheriff's Department took him into custody. Investigators later found Mein Kampf and the Communist Manifesto at his home. Public records reveal little about his early life, but these items suggested he was exploring extreme ideas. In interviews, Parker called the act an experiment to see how people would react to a senseless act. He said he believed life had no meaning and expressed no regret. Detectives noted he was shockingly calm. He had spent the night before weighing the pros and cons of carrying out his plan, showing a deliberate level of preparation. Prosecutors sought to try him as an adult. In March 2018, the court refused to return the case to juvenile court and moved the trial to Christian County due to publicity. Under Kentucky law, Parker could not face the capital punishment or life without review because of his age. He would be eligible for review after no more than 25 years, though plea talks could alter that. In April 2020, facing pandemic-related trial delays, Parker accepted a plea deal guilty on 2 counts of taking a life and 14 counts of causing harm. On June 12, 2020, he was sentenced to 2 life terms with the option for review after 20 years, plus 70 additional years connected to the injuries. During sentencing, the families of Bailey Holt and Preston Cope delivered impact statements, describing the pain and loss that will remain for the rest of their lives. Up next is a teenager missing, a stepmother found lifeless, and a car spotted hundreds of miles away. Jenna Oakley was born in 2001. She grew up in Indiana with her mother, Christy. The adults in that home did not keep it clean. Neighbors and child welfare workers found mold, garbage, and rats. Jenna's mother's partner had served time in prison. He stole from the family and exposed the children to unsafe situations. Jenna often had flea bites. She received little care or attention. In early 2016, Jenna moved to Junction City near Danville, Kentucky. She lived with her father, Philip Oakley, her 13-year-old half-brother David, and her new stepmother, Rhonda Oakley. Jenna spent much of her time in a damp, unfinished basement. She rarely heard kind words or saw signs of concern. No one checked on her court case or well-being. A specialist later noted that Jenna said, "All I ever wanted was a family." On September 1, 2016, David came home from school and found Rhonda lying in the basement. She did not respond. There were several deep cuts around her neck. The front door was locked from the inside. Nothing else was missing. But Rhonda's Cara White 2014 Honda Civic was gone. Jenna was also missing. Within hours, investigators discovered that Jenna had been in a secret relationship with Kenneth Nye, a man about 5 years older. He had arrived in Kentucky the day before. Security cameras at a nearby convenience store showed Jenna and Nye driving the missing car. They appeared calm. That footage suggested Jenna left by choice. Jenna's private journal spelled out her plan. She wrote about harming her father first. Next, she planned to target Rhonda. Last, she would target David. She noted times and methods for each step. A nationwide search led officers to Tucumcari, New Mexico. There, they found Jenna and Nye asleep in Rhonda's Civic at a motel. Kenneth was held in a local jail. He later took his own life and never stood trial. In a handwritten note, he claimed Jenna had no part in the incident. When Jenna returned to Kentucky, she spoke with investigators. She said Kenneth stayed overnight without anyone knowing. She skipped school with him. Video showed her calm, not frightened. She admitted they argued with Rhonda in the basement on the afternoon of September 1. Jenna tried to cut off Rhonda's air. As Rhonda weakened, Kenneth held her until she lost consciousness. Then Jenna brought a kitchen tool and made repeated cuts to Rhonda's neck. Red spatters matched their story. They carried Rhonda into the bedroom. Later, Jenna tossed the object at a fast food parking lot. Then they drove away in the Civic. Why did Jenna choose such extreme steps? Testimony showed that Jenna saw Kenneth as her one source of care. He felt like the knight in shining armor she had always wanted. She feared losing him more than anything. Her early life left her desperate for affection. When her parents tried to separate them, Jenna grew frantic. In her mind, harming her family was the only way to keep her relationship alive. Jenna was first charged with intentionally taking a life and with taking the car without permission. In court, she pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of causing a fatal outcome and to the car theft. Her defense team described her troubled childhood, her lack of any prior offenses, and expert evidence showing that trauma had affected her decision-making. They pointed to her good behavior in youth detention and her full cooperation with authorities. Prosecutors argued that the act was cold and without reason. They won support for a prison sentence rather than treatment. On March 27, 2019, the judge heard from witnesses who spoke about Jenna's respectful conduct in detention. Despite that, the judge ruled that prison time was needed. Jenna received a total of 15 years, 10 years for causing Rhonda's fatal injuries, and 5 years for taking the car. She must serve at least 85% of her time before she can seek release. Credit was given for the period she already spent in custody. In court, Jenna offered a spoken apology. She said she was sorry to her father, to her stepmother's children, and to David. She asked them for forgiveness. Observers described her words as sincere and emotional. Jenna Oakley remains in a Kentucky correctional facility. Based on her sentence and credit for time served, she may first be eligible for release in 2034. The next teenager followed his family into an argument that began on social media and left in handcuffs. Jackie Turner was 17 when he shot 23-year-old Seth Burns on August 25, 2023, in Independence, Kenton County, Kentucky. At that time, Turner was still a minor. Prosecutors asked for his case to be handled in adult court. Very little is known about his early life. His exact birth date, school history, and home situation have not been shared. What is clear is that his mother, Amanda, and his older brother, Xavion, were involved in what happened next. The incident started with an argument on social media. Xavion's former partner had posted harsh messages about parenting. Those messages targeted Xavion's current partner, Emma Ryan. In response, Jackie, Xavion, Amanda, Emma, and 2 sisters got into a car and drove to a house on Archer Court. Doorbell camera footage shows Amanda leading the way down the street. They seemed to want to confront the people inside. Burns and his partner were near their vehicle at the house. Jackie approached with a handgun. He spoke briefly, then fired at Burns. Burns was flown by helicopter to a hospital. He later passed away from his injuries. Turner later told police he did not know Burns. He said he had no plan to fire the weapon. He also said his mother had driven them, knowing they were armed, and that a confrontation might happen. How did an online insult turn into a fatal shooting? Investigators noted that the online messages did not suggest anyone planned to use a gun. Turner said he did not go there intending to take a life. Still, the mix of a tense face-to-face meeting, firearms, and a group setting led to tragedy. In September 2024, Turner admitted guilt to a homicide charge in Kenton County Circuit Court. He agreed to a 30-year sentence, within the 20 to 50-year range he could have faced at trial. On September 23, Judge Kathleen Lape approved the plea. She said the sentence would not erase the pain for Burns' family. At that hearing, Burns' father called his son an innocent young man with no ties to the Turner family. Burns' mother said it took cowardice to fire on someone who was unarmed and not part of the online fight. Amanda Turner pleaded guilty to helping plan the shooting, taking part in a riot, and giving a handgun to a minor. She received 12.5 years, with the chance for parole after 4 years. Xavion was cleared of the homicide charge but pleaded guilty to tampering with evidence. He received a 4-year sentence. Now let's shift to the case of a teen whose simple offer to give directions became a fatal tragedy. Victor Dwayne Taylor grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. Court records place him in his mother's home on the night of September 29, 1984. Investigators later found items belonging to the 2 teens there. He had already served time for theft, aggressive behavior, and reckless endangerment. At the time of the shootings, he was on parole. That evening, 2 17-year-old classmates from Trinity High School, Scott Nelson and Richard Stevenson, were on their way to a football game in Louisville. They got lost and pulled into a Moby Dick restaurant parking lot around 9 p.m. to ask for directions. There they met Taylor and his cousin, George Wade, who offered to guide them. Instead, Taylor showed a pistol. The teens were forced into the back seat at gunpoint. Taylor and Wade drove them to an alley behind an abandoned building at Ardella Court. The two were bound and gagged with socks, ties, or strips of towel. Their pants and shoes were taken. Then Taylor fired a single shot into each teen's head at point-blank range. One of the teens may have been subjected to a non-consensual act before they passed. Both were found the next morning, on September 30. Police launched a large investigation. Witnesses described how the person was taken and later identified Wade in a lineup. Wade admitted that both he and Taylor took part in the confinement and theft. He said that Taylor alone decided to end the teens' lives, even though Wade tried to stop him. Officers recovered items belonging to Scott and Richard at Taylor's mother's home. Neighbors said they overheard Taylor bragging about what he had done. One cousin testified that Taylor came back from the scene laughing and carrying stolen property. No clear motive emerged beyond taking items. Wade's account suggests that a simple theft spiraled out of control. Taylor may have panicked or tried to cover his tracks. Taylor's trial began in March 1986 in Lexington, Kentucky. His lawyers argued that news coverage would bias any jury. Judges denied their request to hold the trial elsewhere. Wade refused to testify, invoking his right not to answer questions. Still, a taped statement from Wade naming Taylor as the shooter was allowed under a hearsay exception. A former cellmate, Jeffrey Brown, first said he heard Taylor confess, but then retracted that claim. Later, he said Taylor had threatened him into silence. Taylor's cousin Eugene testified that he saw Taylor with stolen items and heard him admit what happened. Eugene's charges had been reduced, which some saw as a possible incentive to testify. The jury found Taylor guilty on multiple charges: 2 counts of ending lives, unlawful confinement, theft, and a non-consensual act. He was given the most severe punishment for each loss of life and for the confinement. He also received a total of 60 years for the theft and the non-consensual act, to be served one after the other. Taylor appealed to the Kentucky Supreme Court in 1990. He raised 44 issues, including the use of Wade's hearsay statement and venue bias. The court rejected most of his claims, but ruled that the maximum penalty for the confinement charges violated double jeopardy. Those penalties were changed to life sentences. His penalties for ending lives and the other convictions stayed in place. He made further appeals in 2001 and 2005. The courts found that even if the hearsay evidence had been improper, the other evidence was strong enough to support the verdict. A federal appeals court in the Sixth Circuit also upheld his convictions and the most severe punishments. As of 2025, Taylor remains in the most secure section of Kentucky State Penitentiary near Eddyville. All of his appeals have been exhausted, and no maximum penalty action has been carried out. George Wade serves life without the possibility of release at Luther Luckett Correctional Complex. Taylor's fake guide led 2 teens into a dark alley. But can you imagine a teen bringing a weapon into a prayer circle? The next case takes an even darker turn. On the morning of December 1997, just after sunrise, students at Heath High School in West Paducah, Kentucky, gathered for their usual prayer circle. At about 7:45 a.m., a 14-year-old named Michael Carneal slipped away from the group. He had wrapped several rifles and shotguns in a blanket and brought them into the school. He also carried a small .22 caliber pistol in his backpack. Quietly, he placed earplugs in his ears. Then he raised the pistol and fired 11 times at students about 10 feet away. 3 girls, Nicole Hadley, Kay Steger, and Jessica James, lost their lives. 5 others were seriously hurt. 1 more was lightly grazed. After firing, Carneal dropped the gun and walked calmly to the principal's office, where he gave himself up. Michael grew up in McCracken County. His older sister, Kelly, had been the class valedictorian just 6 months earlier. Michael later told a psychiatrist he often felt invisible next to her. He was not the most teased student, but classmates called him names like Michael Germs. They flicked water at him and sometimes stole his lunch. He struggled with anxiety, low mood, and odd fear. She even covered vents and windows because he believed someone was always watching him. In the weeks before December 1, Michael took guns from his parents' home and a neighbor's garage. He told a few classmates, "Something big is going to happen on Monday," but no one took him seriously. On Thanksgiving Day, he left home with 5 firearms and extra ammunition. He added the .22 pistol later. Michael later said he felt powerless during chapel. He thought carrying a weapon would earn him some respect. He could not fully explain why he chose that day or those students. He mentioned family problems, bullying, and rumors about his personal life as reasons he felt pushed over the edge. A grand jury charged him with 3 counts for the losses and 5 counts for the injuries, plus 1 count of unauthorized entry for possessing the weapons. The court treated him as an adult, even though he was only 14. In October 1998, he pleaded guilty, but mentally ill. His lawyers pointed to diagnoses of schizotypal personality disorder, later paranoid schizophrenia, and persistent low mood. While specialists studied him, he stayed in juvenile facilities. Under the plea deal, he was given life behind bars, with a chance for review after 25 years, meaning he could first seek a second look in 2022. When he finally appeared before the parole board in September 2022, he spoke by video from Kentucky State Reformatory. He admitted he still hears voices. He said those voices once told him to harm himself. He now recognizes those urges are not real. He expressed regret. He said there is no excuse for what he did, but he hoped sharing his struggles might help explain how he reached that moment. The board asked him how he would live outside prison. He spoke of staying with his parents at first and taking any job, maybe at a fast food place or with the sanitation crew. He plans to keep up counseling and medication. He has been on Zoloft and Geodon and meets regularly with a therapist. The board noted he sent letters of support from family and his lawyers, but no personal plan from him. They worried he had not thought through how to rejoin society responsibly. Some survivors and their families pushed for him to stay locked up. Missy Jenkins Smith, paralyzed by one of those 11 shots, said she could never feel safe otherwise. Holland Holm, another survivor, said crowds still make her tense and fearful. Yet one survivor argued that a 14-year-old should be judged with some mercy now that he is an adult, and if health experts agree, could deserve another chance. On September 26, 2022, the parole board voted 7-0 to keep his life term without review. Under Kentucky law, he will remain behind bars unless a governor grants a pardon. There is no record of any final statement from him at sentencing. And because his sentence was life behind bars, not a capital penalty, there was no last meal recorded. As of 2025, Michael Carneal remains at the Kentucky State Reformatory. The next 17-year-old claimed his goal was to end 2 lives and face the harshest penalty possible. Gary Scott Pennington was in 11th grade at East Carter High School in Grayson, Carter County, Kentucky. He walked into the school building on January 18, 1993. His father had once worked in the local coal mines but was no longer able to find work. His mother stayed home to look after the family. They had a hard time paying for electricity and heat. The family had only moved to Carter County a few months earlier. From a young age, Pennington did very well in his classes. He loved math and science. He even taught himself calculus and won a regional science fair. Once he joined East Carter, he signed up for the academic team, but he blamed his English teacher, Ms. McDavid, for giving him a C on a midterm essay. That essay talked about causing harm and loss of life. Ms. McDavid had shared her worries about the essay with other teachers. On a Monday afternoon in mid-January, Pennington brought a handgun to school. He hid it inside a duffel bag. Just before 2:45 p.m., he walked into his 7th period English class. His first shot went wide. When Ms. McDavid shouted, "What are you doing, Scott?" he answered with an insult and fired again. The bullet hit her forehead, and she did not survive. Pennington paused. Soon the school custodian, Mr. Hicks, came in. He tried to protect a student. Pennington fired once more. Mr. Hicks was hit in the abdomen and later passed away. After that, Pennington aimed at his social studies teacher, but did not fire a third time. Students heard him make threats and talk about ending his own life. One student, Mandy, began to write a note home because she believed she might not make it out alive. Pennington told the class he had enough bullets for each of you, then led them out in pairs. This went on for about 15 minutes. At 3:01 p.m., he left the room and gave himself up to officers standing in the hallway. During his questioning, Pennington said he did not have a personal grudge against Ms. McDavid. He claimed he wanted to end 2 lives so he could face the harshest penalty. Earlier, he had written stories with themes of causing harm and loss. After the incident, the school removed those books from its library. In June 1993, a grand jury charged him with 2 counts of second-degree ending a life and 22 counts related to holding students against their will. The trial was moved twice because many local jurors knew the people involved. In February 1995, Pennington pleaded guilty but mentally ill. He was given a life sentence with a chance of parole after 25 years. He was sent to a state prison in West Liberty, Kentucky. While serving that sentence, Pennington was involved in another incident. On April 12, 2014, at a maximum security prison in Eddyville, he injured a food service worker named Joanne Smith. She needed hospital care. A grand jury charged him with first-degree inflicting serious harm. In July 2015, he received an extra 20-year sentence. He is now held at a facility in LaGrange. His total term adds up to about 420 years. Up next are 6 young drifters, 1 rest stop, and a family that would never make it home. If you find stories like these important, consider subscribing. Natasha Wallen Cornett was born on January 26, 1979, in Betsy Lane, Pike County, Kentucky. Her father was a local police officer, but he was not part of her daily life. She grew up in deep poverty. Her mother, Madonna Wallen, raised her alone. Natasha struggled at school. Her grades fell in middle school. She dropped out before 9th grade. She never held a steady job. She did babysitting here and there. By her early teens, she was drinking and using different kinds of illegal substances. At 14, she forged checks to get money. She was also arrested for threatening her mother with a sharp object. Those charges were later dropped. Natasha became involved in goth and occult circles. She once called herself the daughter of Satan. She hurt herself on purpose. On her 17th birthday, she married a friend in a brief ceremony. That marriage fell apart quickly. This made her mental health worse. Karen Howell grew up in nearby Pikeville, Kentucky. Her teen years were full of conflict. She resisted rules. She tried different kinds of substances. During one trip, she said she tried to bite a friend's arm. She explored witchcraft with Ouija boards and automatic writing. She thought she could cast love spells. She heard voices in her head. Her school life was erratic. She ran away from home more than once. She tried to end her life 4 times, twice by cutting herself, and twice by overdose. Karen and Natasha met at school. They joined a group of troubled youth together. Before the family incident, Karen had no record of serious offenses. Jason Bryant was the youngest member of the group. He was 14 when the incident happened. He did not attend Betsy Lane High School like the others. His home life was troubled, and he also had issues with substances. At trial, he denied firing any shots, but other group members and some records said he did. In April 1997, Natasha, 18, Karen, 17, Jason, 14, Edward Mullins, Joseph Risner, and Crystal Sturgill left Pikeville in Risner's old Chevy Citation. They planned to reach New Orleans. They wanted to escape boredom and poverty. The night before, they had a motel party. It got out of control and caused damage. They feared legal trouble. So they decided to leave town on short notice. On the road, they talked about stealing a better car. On the morning of April 6, 1997, the group stopped at a Tennessee rest area. They met the Lillilids, Vidar, 34, Delphina, 28, Tabitha, 6, and Peter, 2. Vidar, who was a Jehovah's Witness, spoke kindly with them. Then Risner showed a gun and forced the family into the van. They made Vidar drive to a quiet road near Baileyton. There, Vidar and Delphina were each shot many times. Vidar was hit in the eye and chest. Delphina was struck 8 times, then run over by the vehicle. 6-year-old Tabitha was shot in the head and did not survive. 2-year-old Peter was shot twice, once in the torso and once in the eye. He survived, but lost sight in one eye and was left with lifelong injuries. It is not clear who pulled the trigger. Some witnesses and court records point to Jason. He later said he was forced to admit he did it. Others in the group said Karen did not fire any shots. Before going to trial, all 6 faced a quick choice. The prosecutor offered to remove the possibility of a harsher sentence if they pleaded guilty to first-degree homicide, taking someone against their will, attempted homicide, and theft. If 4 of them refused, they could have faced a possible harsher penalty. Under pressure, all 6 agreed. Karen later said she felt she had no real choice. On March 13, 1998, each entered a guilty plea. They received 3 life terms without parole for each fatal shooting and an extra 25 years for the attempt on Peter's life. The abduction charges added sentences that ran at the same time. Because they were deemed dangerous offenders, all sentences had to be served one after the other. Jason and Karen were too young for the harshest penalty, but still took the deal. Natasha's first lawyer tried to argue she was not responsible for her actions. He had her emphasize her daughter of Satan persona. The judge removed him. The judge said that story had no real basis in the evidence. In later appeals, Karen argued she did not fully understand or agree to the plea. She said her mental health problems made it hard for her to decide. But the courts found she had knowingly and intelligently accepted the agreement. The next demand was simple. Let me see it. The outcome was anything but. Stuart Watson first drew attention after an incident in May 2023. He had already faced separate charges in September 2022 and March 2023 for possession of certain substances, running from officers, and reckless driving. All those earlier charges were combined with the May case and sent to a grand jury. On the evening of May 5, 2023, officers in Lexington, Kentucky, went to the 1,600 block of Summerhill Drive. Neighbors had heard gunfire near Berry Hill Skate Park. When officers arrived, they found 3 people hit by gunfire. A 16-year-old named Michael Ray Stinnett did not survive. 2 19-year-olds, including Watson, were hurt but lived. They were taken to a hospital. Detective Josh Phillips described what happened next. Stinnett and his friends left a store and walked onto a bike path by Summerhill Drive. Watson's group followed them. Watson wore a black ski mask. He approached Stinnett and asked to see his handgun. Stinnett put his handgun on the ground. Watson then drew his own weapon. He held it against Stinnett's chest and tried to grab the other gun. A shot rang out from Watson's weapon, striking Stinnett. Stinnett fell and, in self-defense, fired back. Watson was seriously hurt. Stinnett did not survive where he fell. Watson was found near his weapon and taken into custody. Witnesses and investigators saw Watson's actions as very aggressive. He pointed a gun at a teenager's chest and forced him to comply. The situation escalated quickly. What started as a demand to see a gun became a struggle. It ended with one teen losing his life and another badly hurt. Court records show Watson wanted to take Stinnett's gun. This was not a random act. He made clear demands and used physical force. His plan seemed to be to walk away with the firearm. When Stinnett resisted, the encounter turned fatal. At Watson's first court hearing, the judge sent the case to a grand jury. The evidence included 3 witness accounts and Detective Phillips's testimony. Watson faced charges of first-degree homicide and first-degree theft. The earlier charges for possession, fleeing police, and reckless driving were also included for review. Watson was held at the Fayette County Detention Center. His bond was set at $1 million for the homicide charge and $3,500 for the other counts. As of mid-2023, his case was still before the grand jury. No final decision or sentence had been announced. The next teenager's loyalty to him would lead to a decision she could never take back. Penny Ann Nichols was a 16-year-old girl from Greenup County, Kentucky. She lived in a quiet area with a reputation for being peaceful. Her family wasn't well known in the media. People around her described her life as pretty normal. During the summer of 2022, Penny met a boy named Isaiah Martin. He was also a teenager, either 16 or 17 at the time. Isaiah lived with his mother, Thersa Martin, who was 49 years old. They all lived on Darby Hollow Road. On June 7, 2022, something terrible happened inside their home. Isaiah carried out a plan against his own mother. According to investigators, Isaiah went into her room and used both a sharp object and a firearm during the act. Reports also mentioned that another teenager helped by bringing the firearm after hearing what Isaiah had planned. That other teenager was Penny. She didn't take part in what happened in the room, but she admitted later that she had supplied the weapon. Penny was charged as someone who helped make the plan possible. She pled guilty to something called facilitation or conspiracy. That means she wasn't the one who acted directly, but was deeply involved in making it happen. Court documents showed that Isaiah had a strained relationship with his mother. There had been ongoing tension between them. Over time, those problems seemed to grow worse. Eventually, Isaiah and Penny came up with a plan together. Penny's role in it came from her connection to Isaiah. She was loyal to him, and that loyalty led her to take part in something extremely serious. Even though she didn't carry out the act herself, she provided the firearm and stayed nearby. That made her part of the whole event in the eyes of the law. Her case went to court in Greenup County. On January 25, 2024, she was found guilty. Since she was 16 when it all happened, her full sentencing was delayed until after she turned 18. Once she became an adult, she was moved into adult court and sentenced to 40 years in prison. That sentence is being served in an adult correctional facility. At the time she helped Isaiah, Penny was still legally a minor, but the charges she faced were adult level because of how serious the situation was. After her 18th birthday, she was fully processed as an adult and sent to adult prison. It's difficult to picture what went through her mind during those moments. A calm rural home turned into the scene of something unimaginable. Penny wasn't in the room when everything happened, but she had played a critical role. She brought the weapon. She stayed close. She made choices that changed lives forever. She could have been in school that day. She could have been thinking about her future. Instead, she followed a plan that would take all of that away. What was she thinking when Isaiah went through with it? Did she freeze? Did she feel regret? We may never know. But those final moments before everything happened shaped the rest of her life. Penny Ann Nichols was just 16 when it happened. On January 25, 2024, she was sentenced to 40 years in adult prison for her role. She is now serving that sentence. Chance Guthrie was 14 when the incident happened in Louisville's St. Denis area. No one has shared his exact birth date or details about his family or home life. Reports say he lived under court-ordered home monitoring before age 18. Later, he moved to a youth detention center. On April 14, 2021, just before 4 p.m., Guthrie fired a single shot at another 14-year-old, Darren Tila, in that same neighborhood. St. Denis was usually quiet until that afternoon. Police say the teens were part of a group of about 6. After an argument, Guthrie aimed at the back of Darren's head. Neighbors scattered in panic. Darren lay on a front lawn until first responders arrived. He was taken to University of Louisville Hospital in critical condition and passed away soon after. Public records only mention the argument as the lead-up to the shooting. Darren's aunt, Brandy Beckman, spoke of her deep sorrow and frustration. She said she still has no answers. She added that no child should have made such a choice. Guthrie was arrested in September 2021, about 5 months later. He faced a charge for causing the fatal shooting. At first, he stayed under home monitoring instead of in jail. Local judges allowed him to remain at home so he could continue attending school and follow all conditions. On March 7, 2025, as he neared his 18th birthday, Judge Annie O'Connell gave him 6 years and 6 months in juvenile detention. She denied his request to serve time under supervision outside the facility. After he turned 18, state law required him to finish the rest of his term in an adult correctional center. Darren's family said they felt relief at that outcome. Darren's family still hopes for some form of peace. They wish they could ask Guthrie, "Why did this happen?" They do not expect to hear an answer. Guthrie was found responsible for the most serious charge of taking another person's life. Although he was a minor when it occurred, he was tried as an adult. His sentence of 6 years and 6 months began in juvenile detention. After turning 18 in 2025, he moved to an adult prison. Unless he's released early, he is expected to remain there until late 2025. The next group of friends were passing the gun around. Then, one shot changed everything. DeMarcus Hedges grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. He often spent time with friends in nearby northern Kentucky. Public records give little detail about his family or early years. What we know is that he hung out with a group that included Scarlett Tucker. They were between 16 and 18 years old. In the early hours of January 3, 2023, several teens came back to a house on Silverbrook Drive in Burlington, Boone County, Kentucky. They had been in Cincinnati and Covington. Among them were 16-year-old Scarlett Tucker and 18-year-old DeMarcus Hedges. Around 2:15 a.m., someone called the police. Officers found Scarlett in a bedroom. She had a bullet wound to her forehead and was unresponsive. She was later declared to have lost her life on the spot. Witnesses say a small bag of a controlled substance fell on the floor. DeMarcus told Scarlett to pick it up. She refused. He then pointed a handgun at her head. A single shot rang out. After that, he ran from the house. The other teens stayed behind and spoke with deputies. Boone County authorities charged DeMarcus with several counts. One count was first-degree homicide for the fatal shooting of Scarlett. Another count was tampering with evidence for things he did after the shooting. He also faced 2 counts of an illegal transaction involving minors, tied to the presence of the controlled substance and the underage teens. His bond was set at $1 million. He remains in the Boone County Detention Center. In early court hearings, his lawyer said the shooting was an accident. They claimed the teens were handling the gun for fun. They thought it was empty and did not expect it to fire. The lawyer called it a party situation gone wrong. Detective Justine Bates testified that the bag-dropping incident happened earlier. She said it did not directly lead to the shooting. She noted that the group had been passing the gun around. They even took pictures with it, pointing at each other's heads before the shot. The defense asked the judge to lower the charges. So far, the homicide count has stayed in place. No trial outcome or sentence has been made public yet. DeMarcus is still in jail, waiting for his day in court. The main question is whether the court will see this as an intentional act or as a tragic accident. Kyle Miller grew up in Vine Grove, Harden County, Kentucky. Public records give almost no detail about his early life or his family. He had a younger brother, Carson Lee Miller, who was 7 in June 2019. Beyond that, there is little on his upbringing or any past run-ins with the law. In June 2019, Kyle was 15. Inside their home, he took his brother's life by stopping his ability to breathe. Neighbors and family members saw it happen. One relative called 911 right away. Paramedics rushed Carson to the hospital, but he did not survive. The Harden County Sheriff's Office said the act was done on purpose. They ruled out any accident. Before that day, Kyle had no known record of trouble. There were no reports of fights, detentions, or other aggressive acts. This fatal incident came out of nowhere. No clear reason for what he did has been shared by police. People have asked whether Kyle planned what he did, or if it was a sudden decision. Investigators said he meant to do it. But they have never released any motive and nothing about jealousy, anger, or mental health. With no official explanation, everyone can only guess why it happened. At first, Kyle's case stayed in juvenile court. In Kentucky, serious cases involving minors can move to adult court once the defendant turns 18. In October 2021, soon after Kyle's 18th birthday, Judge John Simcoe resentenced him as an adult. The judge kept the 20-year term from the juvenile case. He could have shortened it or given probation, but he did not. On that court day, Kyle appeared in handcuffs. Reports say he cursed at Judge Simcoe after the sentence was read. The public never saw a full trial transcript. What we know comes from summaries and news reports, not a full jury record. Kyle is serving 20 years at the Eastern Kentucky Correctional Complex in West Liberty. Before that, he was held at the Harden County Detention Center while the case moved forward. There is no public note of any chance for early release in his juvenile portion. In 2023 and early 2024, Kyle began sending threatening letters to judges, including John Simcoe and Jerry Crosby. He believed that federal prisons had better conditions and wanted a new case in federal court. After he mailed several notes saying he would harm and blackmail them, prosecutors charged him with 6 counts of mailing threats. In February 2025, a federal judge added 4 more years to his sentence, plus 3 years of supervised release. That extra time will start only after he finishes his state term, likely around 2039.